So, I'm right now trying to deal with issues involved in the impossibilities of representation within a collaborative, intersubjective form, if you will, of autobiographical and narrative research. So, what do I mean by that? I'm a member of a narrative research group, an ongoing research group. We've been meeting for 7.5 years now at Teachers College. The group is comprised of now former doctoral students as well as current doctoral students and myself. 3 of the people, actually 4 or 5 have graduated now and are in assistant professorships around the country, the U.S., but also in Puerto Rico. So we also do telecommunication meetings with the we call it the black box, you know, that telecommunication awful device that quite often doesn't work. And we meet every 2 to 3 weeks. I tend to work in collaboration, in relation. However, tremendous questions about this. So, given the nature of this group, which I'll describe very briefly in 1 second, we really necessarily have to work across geographic, as I've just described, distances, but even more importantly, we have to work across a variety of nationalities, quote unquote, among many other differences in our ongoing deliberations. So we are struggling with the fact that given that education, I think right now, worldwide, is really situated as post-national and not just multinational or international, we're trying to really work with the notion of generating enactments and impossible representation of our individual as well as, if you will, collective, and I put that into quotation marks, epistemological, methodological, theoretical dislocations. And they really are infusing, these dislocations are infusing our work as autobiographical and qualitative narrative researchers whose countries of origin or of educational backgrounds or of research sites and participants include, and I have to read the list, this is the group with whom I'm working: Japan, Grenada, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Morocco, Botswana, Puerto Rico, Greece, Nigeria, Taiwan, Colombia, South America, South Korea, and the U.S. Okay. I'm probably one of 3 U.S.-born researchers in this group. All right. So, given that, how do we deal with the notions of transnationalities, subjectivities, intersubjectivities, and impossible representations when one is attempting to work in relation? We're working in a time we really believe that where categories and boundaries travel. You know, they travel, they circulate and work differently and in fluid ways in different times and different places, both metaphorically and literally, right? And we're particularly influenced by feminist work in the transnational now, choosing to deliberately use the word transnational rather than international, for example, really trying to use transnational as a gesture toward destabilizing rather than maintaining boundaries of nation, race, gender, sexual orientation, for example. And really, I think, influenced very much by Karen Kaplan, especially Kaplan and Gruhl's notion that transnationality expresses possibilities for links and affiliations, as well as differences, for all of us who inhabit locations differently. I mean, it's a very broad, kind of notion, but tries to really disrupt a notion of national, as a fixed, kind of location. So we're trying to do this work, really examining concepts and metaphors and material conditions of place and space, mobilities, constructions of subjectivities, intersubjectivities in our work, always with an attention to difference. So we're doing so, I think, in light of the heterogeneity and rapid flux that now characterize global flows of people, languages, technologies, commodities, ideas, cultures, and capitals through and across constantly changing borders, discourses, and subjectivities. And we really, given our and of course I have to take responsibility, given the autobiographical research bent of the group, given the narrative qualitative research bent of the group, given that these are students who have taken classes with me and those are my passions, of course I have to acknowledge that. But given all of that, we seem to be caught up in really trying to examine how transnational flows and mobilities become visceral. How are they lived out in daily life, and how can they become embodied and represented, knowing that representation is impossible? Representation becomes a fixed thing, and we're talking about all of this flow and mobility. So how can we do this work, if we take into all of these things into account, rapidly changing discourses and material effects of globalization on constructions of selves and others? So my big question is, we seem to be doing this, but we don't know how we're doing it or really if we're doing it. How to pay attention to all of these tensions that I've quickly identified. So I think what we would argue right now, if the whole group were together, and many of these people could do it probably very much better than I could given particular situations, but I think we try to say that as a collective working together for 7.5 years, we really embody effects of transnational flows and mobilities. And we each have been loosened from our definitions and fixed notions of local as well as global. All of that has gotten challenged in this work. And we're really trying to figure out how to talk about this in both written and embodied performative ways, whether through conference presentations, which we have done together as a group now for 4 or 5 years, how to embody that in visceral ways, without getting fixed into particular categories. I don't know the answer to this. I mean, all we can do is try, and it's never satisfactory. But these are the tensions. So we're really, in a certain sense, struggling with and for disidentification. Disidentification in that theoretical concept of the loss of habits of thought and representation. We want to get lost in our we want to get lost and lose our habitual ways of thinking and representing in the usual kinds of ways. So we're trying to do so in order to look for ways in which otherness prompts, mobilizes, and allows for the affirmation of what is not contained in present conditions. If I were to try and verbalize a goal that we have together, that would be it. How much